Timbuktu. You've heard the name, right? It's like a synonym for the middle of nowhere, the most remote place you can imagine. For centuries, it was this legendary golden city, lost to the world. But where did that legend even come from? And what's the real story? Well, today we're going to peel back the layers of the myth to find the incredible truth about Timbuktu. Okay, so imagine you're in 16th century Europe. This quote from a famous traveler named Leo Africanus is basically your first real introduction to Timbuktu. And what an introduction. He's talking about a king with gold plates, thousands of soldiers, and a city packed with scholars. This one description just completely captured the Western imagination. It created this idea of an African El Dorado, sparking a centuries-long obsession. And here you see it, the myth right next to the reality. On the left, you've got this fantastical European drawing. It's grand, it's exotic, it looks like something out of a fairy tale. And on the right, that's Timbuktu today, a city made of earth and sand. It's beautiful in its own way, for sure, but it's a far cry from that golden mirage. So what gives? How did the legend get so far from the truth?
Well, the first part of the answer isn't a fantasy at all. Timbuktu's incredible power came from something much more basic than golden palaces. It all came down to one thing: location, location, location. Geography literally built this city.
Just take a look at this map. You can see Timbuktu right there. It's in the perfect spot. It's perched right on the edge of the vast Sahara Desert. But it's also just a stone's throw from the Niger River, which is the absolute lifeblood of West Africa. This made it the ultimate crossroads, the natural pit stop for anyone and everyone trying to get across the desert.
And because of that location, you get one of the simplest but most powerful economic engines in history. Here's the deal. The South had gold, tons of it. But in that climate, they needed salt, not just for flavor, but to preserve food, to literally survive. Meanwhile, the North had giant slabs of salt they could mine, but they wanted gold. Timbuktu? It was the perfect middleman, the stock exchange where salt and gold met.
And this is how that trade actually looked. For centuries, these massive salt caravans, known as azalai, would trek across the Sahara. We're talking sometimes thousands of camels, each one loaded down with heavy slabs of salt on a grueling journey that could take weeks. This was the system that turned a seemingly empty patch of desert into a global center of wealth.
But here's the twist. As important as all that gold and salt was, it wasn't Timbuktu's real treasure. Not even close. The thing that truly defined the city, its most valuable asset, was something you couldn't weigh or spend. It was knowledge.
25,000. Just let that number sink in. At its peak, Timbuktu had a student population of around 25,000 people. This wasn't some sleepy little town. It was one of the great intellectual capitals of the world, a true university thriving in the middle of the desert.
On the left, that's the famous Sankore Madrasa, basically the main college of the University of Timbuktu. And on the right, you see the kind of work they were doing there. And look, these aren't just religious texts. We're talking complex mathematics, astronomy, law, medicine. This was a place for serious, advanced scholarship. Yeah, during its golden age, books and the ability to read them were the ultimate status symbols in Timbuktu. Forget gold necklaces. Having a library made you a big deal. There was a huge book trade, with manuscripts being imported and copied by hand. The legendary Emperor Mansa Musa even went out and recruited the best and brightest scholars to come teach there. You could almost think of Timbuktu as Africa's Florence during the Renaissance, a vibrant, buzzing hub of culture and ideas.
So, of course, you have to ask the big question. If Timbuktu was this rich, this smart, this important, what on earth happened to it? Well, its fall was a long, slow, and tragic story.
It wasn't one single event, but a series of devastating blows that stretched over 400 years. It started with a Moroccan invasion in 1591 that really broke the city's spirit. Then, its whole economic reason for being started to crumble as ships began sailing around Africa instead of trading across the desert. By the time the French showed up, it was just a shadow of its former self. And then, just a little over a decade ago, came maybe the worst threat of all. Now, that invasion in 1591, it's so important to understand that it wasn't just a military conquest. The Moroccans specifically targeted the city's scholars, the very heart of its identity. They were either executed or forced into exile. It was a targeted assassination of the city's intellect, a forced brain drain that it never really recovered from. And that brings us to our time.
Because even after all that decline, Timbuktu's greatest treasure, those manuscripts, was still there. And in 2012, that treasure faced total annihilation, which sparked one of the most incredible cultural rescue missions you've ever heard of.
In 2012, extremists captured the city. They saw the ancient shrines and tombs of local saints as a form of idolatry, so they took pickaxes to them, destroying priceless history. This picture of local craftsmen literally rebuilding a mausoleum by hand shows you both the horror of what happened and the amazing resilience of the people who live there.
But the real fear was for the books. So an amazing secret operation spun into action. Librarians and regular citizens got their hands on thousands of metal trunks. They packed them full of these priceless manuscripts and then secretly gave them to families all over the city to hide in their homes. Then, piece by piece, they were smuggled out, in cars, on donkey carts, on boats down the river, all the way to the capital city, Bamako.
And the man at the center of this whole web was a librarian named Abdel Kauder Haidara. He was the mastermind. Using his own money and his deep community ties, he organized this network of ordinary people who risked everything to save the written soul of their culture. It was an absolutely heroic act.
And this chart, wow, this shows you just how successful they were. The extremists did manage to burn more than 4,000 manuscripts in a final, hateful act of destruction. A tragic loss, no question. But look at what was saved. Around 350,000 manuscripts were smuggled to safety. They saved the library. It was an overwhelming triumph against all odds.
But the story doesn't just end there. Timbuktu's struggle is ongoing. As recently as August of 2023, the city was put under a blockade, cutting off food and supplies, creating yet another crisis for its people. The fight for Timbuktu, and for the people who call it home, is very much alive today. And yet, this is the legacy that survived. Because of the quiet bravery of hundreds of everyday people, these stacks of paper and leather, the collective memory of a continent, were saved. They're the ultimate proof that Timbuktu wasn't a myth about gold, but a real city of incredible knowledge and unbreakable spirit.
The story of Timbuktu really shows us that a culture's true wealth isn't always the shiny stuff. It's often hidden, protected not by armies, but by librarians, by families, by regular people. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? If this entire vast library of human thought could be saved in secret, what other hidden histories are out there, just waiting for us to find them?